Well, there was going to become a time when we were going to have to talk about him once again. Ross Atkins, ladies and gentlemen. Is he going to make the right decisions?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasko, Carter First too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to the YouTube page. We've sort of made it the hub, so you guys can subscribe there. It's free. You might as well. It helps us out, keeps us at the top of your page, and it lets you guys know if there's any lives, videos, podcasts, shorts, anything. It'll be all there on the YouTube page. You might as well head over there. Drop a subscription, as I said. As well, we have the Discord link down in the description. Make sure you guys go and click that and join there so that you guys can chat with us about Blue Jays any time of day as well. We're still doing Movember. Still rocking with that. Please go donate if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. Some of you guys have been killing it. Even if you drop $5, $2, whatever it is, your donation helps. So make sure you guys go and do that. Lots to get into today. This is going to be a Ross Atkins episode where we got to talk about him, right? I feel like we haven't done a Ross Atkins update video, how we feel about, his capabilities in this next season, what he's going to do in the free agency. Sort of all-encompassing here. And then, of course, Blake goes to the Dodgers. So we'll talk about that, too, as sad as we are to talk about it. Carter, let's kick things off. Let's get it started. Ross Atkins, just as an overall, before we really dive deep into everything, just has your level of hate, has your level of anger sort of dissipated at all moving into free agency? Or has it just been a distraction?
I wouldn't say I hate Ross Atkins, but I definitely don't like what he's doing for the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm definitely not confident in his abilities for what he's done in the past. This is the biggest offseason in Toronto Blue Jays history. It's the biggest offseason in Ross Atkins' career with the Toronto Blue Jays. It's about, at best, I'd say, is a 50-50 split with people wanting Ross Atkins gone this last offseason and wanting him here. Obviously, Mark Shapiro kept Ross Atkins around, and that hasn't left a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays fans, us included, very confident for this offseason. He's made a bunch of quotes. He said a bunch of different things. Again, how much validity can you take from that? We've went over his October meetings, what he said in there. But overall, he can say whatever he wants. We can look at the history of his transactions. We can look at the history of how he set up the Toronto Blue Jays for the future. And it hasn't really worked out too well during the Ross Atkins tenure.
Yeah, well, just to start things off, I mean, I don't necessarily believe that it was 50-50. I think it was like 95-5 to the people that wanted him gone to not gone. But yeah, there's a lot to take away from Ross Atkins as of right now, right? You've seen his tenure. You've seen the team and their inability to win in the playoffs. You've seen big free agents on the market. The Blue Jays put in for them every time. And then every time we're shell-shocked that they don't end up coming to Toronto. And if that is a Toronto thing, if it's a Canada thing, if it's how the team is built, it's probably a little bit of everything, but mostly to the fact that this team is not built, as we can see, for success. And players know that and understand that. So as much as we always, we keep going back to Juan Soto here, is this a prime destination for him to want to go? When you see all the holes in this team and how they've competed in the past, and this is a Ross Atkins built team. So has he set this team up for failure? And has he set this team up to now not get high quality free agents because of the way this team was built?
You can argue that for sure. You can argue that a lot of this is Ross Atkins doing, but at the end of the day, it is the players on the field. But who's putting those players on the field? Who's making these signings? Who's handing out these contracts? It is Ross Atkins and company. He is the guy that is going to be able to set up the Toronto Blue Jays for the most amount of success. Again, if you don't get a good Vladdy season, you get Bichette, kind of how he was in 2024. You get a bunch of guys on down years. At some point, you can't blame Ross Atkins for absolutely everything. But just looking at the offseason from 2023, there was a glaring problem with the Toronto Blue Jays, and it was the offense. The offense needed to be helped drastically. And what did he do for the Toronto Blue Jays? He signed 39-year-old Justin Turner. He signed IKF, which actually worked out pretty well for the Blue Jays tenure. Looked kind of like how regular IKF is with the Pirates again. So I think he kind of got lucky in that sense, unless he just made the biggest, brainiac move of all time and saw that when nobody else saw that. But there, with the quotes that he said, one of them is they're ditching the safety net for 2025. Where was the safety net in 2024? Why were you holding back for in 2024 when you started as bad as you did, when the whole season went as bad as you did? I don't think you should have a safety net when you're trying to win in 2024. You're trying to win in 2025. You've really been trying to win since 2020. Why are you having the safety net? You only have such a little time, a little window to win. And then all these guys are getting older. They're getting out of their primes. And then obviously with arbitration, some of these guys, when they hit free agency, you're going to have to pay them a lot more than obviously what you were paying them in arbitration. And Mark Shapiro has come out, and this is why we've kind of said that the Blue Jays are limited with what they can do in free agency, because Mark Shapiro has said on multiple occasions that the payroll is going to be very similar to as it was in 2024. And under the Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro tenure, they haven't really gone over the luxury tax whatsoever. So that's why we've had this limited capacity. It used to be $50 million with the Jordan Romano and Dylan Tate non-tenders. It's closer to $60 million now. So there's a bunch of moves that need to be made. We've kind of went over this a bunch of times, but at minimum, what does Ross Atkins have to do for this Toronto Blue Jays team to make them competitive for 2025?
Well, Carter, just going on to the safety net quote, I don't even know what the hell that means, to be honest with you. I mean, what's the safety net? I can't stand when people say, oh, well, we're really going to go for it this year. Why haven't you been going for it every year? You're a professional baseball team. Nobody's going out there and trying to lose games. So I don't know what the safety net quote was, like what it meant. I really didn't understand it. And I think it was a slap in the face. It's just more throwaway words. And like I've said, I 100% agree with you in the sense that it's not just Ross Atkins. It is the players on the field. It's John Schneider. It's everybody that contributes to this baseball team not doing what they need to do to win. But you're right. This is a lot of it comes down to the players. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of dumb moves. There's been some good moves also, which we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about. We'll give Ross Atkins his praises when there's something to praise. We always praise the trade deadline because they were great moves at the deadline. Really stunning moves, actually. But it all comes back down to these little moves are great, but they're not winning you playoff games. And I think that out of everything that you see, out of everything that we talk about and other podcasts talk about and other Blue Jays media talk about, it all comes down to the fact of winning. And yes, at the end of the day, only one team wins the World Series. But winning a playoff game, there are a lot of other teams that do that. And the Blue Jays haven't been able to do that for 8 years. And 8 years is a long time as a GM to go without a playoff win. Most guys are canned well before that. Why has Ross Atkins not been? That's a great question.
Well, and he's come out and he said the goal remains for the Toronto Blue Jays to win a World Series, and he needs to take a step in order for them to do that. If you're going to compete for a World Series, are these World Series moves really Justin Turner, IKF? Like, these are your World Series moves? If you're going to go out and say that, and then you have the history of making these moves and setting your team up in a specific way, when even the fan base, like you look at Toronto Blue Jays media, Toronto Blue Jays Twitter, Instagram, you name it, when all Toronto Blue Jays fans are relatively on the same page about something, and it's so glaringly obvious what the problem is, and the management just fails to address it over and over and over again, that's where we start to lack this confidence in Ross Atkins. It's the definition of insanity. When something happens over and over again and there's no change and you're expecting it to change, that's kind of where we're at with Ross Atkins. Like you said, we haven't had a playoff win since 2016. I don't care how many playoff appearances we've had. We could have made the playoffs for 8 straight years. If you don't get a playoff win, the whole goal about any sports team in general is to win a championship, or at minimum, like make a playoff run or win a playoff game, like you said. So it's absolutely insane how he'll back himself up and say, oh, we want to win a World Series. These are the goals. These are the goals. But when we've seen what he's done in history, it doesn't really back up what he's saying at all.
No, Carter. And you know what? I guess I sort of want to leave it here just before we take a little bit of a break. At the end of the day, I mean, we've talked about Ross Atkins. We've said our piece, and I continually don't want to keep harping on this, but he's our guy. Every team is going to question every move that's made most of the time. Me and you were fans or thought that it was a decent Justin Turner move when that came around, which it wasn't terrible for what that move should have been, but that shouldn't have been your big free agent splash. You've said it. I've said it. I think we've had comments about it. And I want to go back to the comments here a little bit because this is one thing that I continually see in our comments, in other comments when talking about Ross Atkins, is the fact that people saying it's not Ross Atkins' fault. The guys in the field can't play. And why do you just blame Ross Atkins and John Schneider when we came out with some of those videos a while back? Well, at the end of the day, the players have to do their job, but the management team has to set them up to succeed and setting them up with pieces to surround themselves with. We cannot go into the next year with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bichette, both maybe not signed to contracts, going into possibly their last year, surrounding them with 240 hitting Daulton Varsho, 220 hitting Alejandro Kirk, Davis Schneider, who, as much as I always say I love him, needs to show up, needs to play better. Ernie Clement, who had a great season last year, but isn't a guy that you can, slot in the 3 hole, but just before Vlad, or slot in the 4 hole just behind Vlad. You need to surround these guys. Other teams are making stuff happen, and they're understanding their problem, which I'll get into when Ross Atkins talks about the bullpen, Carter. I have a quote from him just on that, which I want to start next segment off with, because I think it shows you that the Blue Jays aren't necessarily keying in on their problem areas. I don't think a Juan Soto chase solves the entirety of this team's problems. But you know what? In saying that, Carter, I know we do got to take a break. We'll come back. I want your reaction just to start this next segment off before I get into the whole bullpen fiasco. So save that response. We'll be right back after this short break. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know I always talk about FanDuel. I love FanDuel. It's my place to bet because there is nowhere better. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need, all in one place to bet on the NFL. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm telling you guys, the live game betting is the place to be because you can see when guys are doing bad. You can see when guys are doing good. Make sure you check that out and get the $150 in bonus bets because, it's free money at that point. You'll get started. Like I said, $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Carter, just before we went to break, I sort of left you with a lot to think about there. Let's start with the comment piece of it. When people are, trying to maybe defend them and put it all on the players. I know we've had this conversation before, but, in talking about Ross Atkins, this is one of those things that come up. Can you just blame the players, or is this a lot to do with the management team here?
Well, when we look at the 2023 offseason and you look at how some of these players panned out, the JD Martinez's, the Jorge Solers, the Cody Bellingers, when you go back in that sense and you're looking at these players, they didn't really have that good of seasons. And when you look at the free agency class of that year, again, you can't really change anything too much. And if you're going to write off the 2024 season, I guess that's a season that you're going to write off. But then you're wasting a prime year of Vladdy. You're wasting a prime year of Bo, you could say, but didn't really show off that prime ability. George Springer falling off a cliff. Like, there are some things that you can't account for. Injuries, things like that. Jordan Romano, Erik Swanson, Tim Meza being the worst bullpen arm we've ever seen. So there are some things that, again, Ross Atkins can't control. But when you look at the overwhelming needs of this team, a trade could have been made with the prospects you had. You could have moved on from some of these smaller pieces, like even the Davis Schneiders you could have used as a trade chip. I feel like there wasn't really a lot done after the Shohei Ohtani thing. And that's the biggest problem with that offseason, is that they went all in on Shohei Ohtani and had absolutely no backup plan. They did not make the correct moves. They did not make any moves that really helped the team whatsoever, other than the IKF signing. I guess you could throw Yariel Rodriguez in there, that contract. We're going to have to see how that looks. Obviously, only had 1 year, still has 4 years remaining. But overall, it's, again, you have to blame Ross Atkins for, I would say, the majority of it. But at the end of the day, you can't really account for how some of the players progressed throughout that season.
Yeah, and I agree with that component. There are always going to be things in sport that you can't control, that the players things happen. Even sometimes the players can't control. But at the end of the day, it's all about the setup. It's all about the perspective. I think going into last season, I think Blue Jays fans felt duped in the sense that you see Justin Turner and IKF and yes, Yariel Rodriguez, who probably wasn't supposed to really play MLB service time last year. So that's not a splash in the offseason on a team that's looking to make a World Series push to me. I think that you're right. A trade would have had to come in. And you know what, Carter? I got a quote here from Ross Atkins just on trades. I'll get into the bullpen later, but you sort of got me going on the trade talks. Ross Atkins says there will be opportunities via trade or via free agency and via trade. We have some depth that if we need to make trades, we're in the position to do so. Which, yes, they are. And I like that he's addressing that conversation of the trade now. But again, saying that there will be opportunity, this isn't a clear-cut answer. And I know we're not supposed to get clear-cut answers on these things when it comes to that, GMs talking, owners talking, whatever it may be. But everything that when I look back over Ross Atkins' time within the media, talking to the media, giving Blue Jays the hope, I feel like he doesn't ever back it up. Like he's good at talking the talk, but then he's just does not walk the walk whatsoever.
Well, and let's talk about some trades that Ross Atkins has made. Let's go to the Daulton Varsho trade. Daulton Varsho for Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel. I know a lot of people don't love this trade. I'm more 50-50 on it. I think the Toronto Blue Jays probably lost this trade. It is a little bit early on to say, but Daulton Varsho is one of the best defenders in all of baseball, if not the best defender in all of baseball. Gabriel Moreno had a good playoff in 2023, but other than that, in 2024, did you really hear anything about Gabriel Moreno whatsoever? I didn't hear much, but when you're trading your number one prospect in your system, you got to hope that you can get a little bit more, especially when you're throwing in Lourdes Gurriel, who had a pretty productive season as well, got better defensively. It would have been a huge bat for the Toronto Blue Jays in their lineup. But the one I wanted to talk about is the Teoscar Hernandez trade. And I think this is where everything went wrong for Ross Atkins, the defense first approach and how that worked out for the Toronto Blue Jays. You trade a power hitter. You see what Teoscar Hernandez did with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Again, there's a lot more players to hide behind in that lineup. You have to throw to Teoscar Hernandez because do you want to throw to Freddie Freeman? Do you want to throw to Mookie Betts? Do you want to throw to Shohei? So he's got a little bit more protection in that lineup. But trading a power bat that can hit 30-plus home runs in the season and drive in 100 RBIs for our, again, good relief pitcher. I love Erik Swanson, but it's a relief pitcher. You kind of see the up and down trajectories of that, and he does address that in one of the bullpen comments that I have as well. And then you look at Adam Mako. He's, again, prospect. It's one of those things. Is he going to work out? Is he not going to work out? I feel like that trade sent the Toronto Blue Jays in a downward spiral offensively, and he really left the bulk of the offense on guys like George Springer, who is reaching out of his prime, starting to get a little bit older. Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You got to hope can carry some of the offense, but I feel like that's a whole lot of pressure to put on some guys that are, at that time, 24 and 25 years old.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think looking back at the Blue Jays fandom, into Blue Jays land perspective, it all comes down to that Teoscar Hernandez trade. I agree with you completely on the Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel trade. I think that bringing in Daulton Varsho, you see what the guy can do defensively, and you see, I think, potential in his bat. And I think that I think at the time, I probably would have considered that myself. Maybe I don't pull the trigger. Who knows? But I think that I understand the thought process there. The Teoscar Hernandez one hurts me to my very core because you see how good he is. And I would make everybody play on one leg to have Teoscar Hernandez back in the lineup just because you need those bats. We've talked about it over and over and over again. If we've talked about it in the sense that, for one, it's more fun to watch games where the Blue Jays are scoring tons of runs. But just how solid he was. He wasn't good defensively. But I don't think when you have Daulton Varsho in center field, I don't think you need, we've talked about this with the left fielder, right? That you don't need some all-star in left field defensively. You just need somebody who can go there and catch the lazy fly balls. So no, this one, I 100% totally understand when everybody talks about Ross Atkins and his miscomings and misfortunes. You think it all goes back to Teoscar, and I think you're 100% right, Carter.
But when we go back to that as well, we talked about the trade. Yeah, I think they would have lost that trade, but they had the opportunity in the 2023 offseason to bring this guy back. In this point, we would have said Ross Atkins absolutely fleeced the Mariners because they had him for 1 year, didn't re-sign him, came back to the Toronto Blue Jays. It would have been a perfect scenario, and he expressed interest in wanting to come back to the Toronto Blue Jays, and Ross Atkins just doesn't pull the trigger. So that is another reason why it's just the confidence in Ross Atkins, from my perspective, is just at an all-time low. And another thing I wanted to go into is some of the moves that he has made in the in free agency when this team has had the chances to win. I'm not going to go over the 2018-2019 seasons because the Toronto Blue Jays were bad. I don't care about Freddie Galvis. I mean, like, you're not going to compete in those years. That wasn't the expectation. Whereas you get into the George Springer year, the Marcus Semien year, the Robbie Ray year, that was a pretty good offseason, and you were hoping to build on that. There was a lot of World Series aspirations during that time. You had Vladimir Guerrero Jr., still a very young player, going into his own. Kevin Biggio was being talked about at that point. You hoped for more things from him. Obviously, you had Bichette. Those were the big three in your organization. Then again, George Springer signing the biggest contract in Toronto Blue Jays history. Robbie Ray having a Cy Young season. But then you go into some of these other years. In 2022, you signed Chris Bassitt, which was a very good signing as well. Kevin Kiermaier worked out pretty well as well there. Brandon Belt, you wanted more of a leader there. Not obviously what Brandon Belt is, but again, not the worst offseason of all time. It's just the Teoscar Hernandez trade hurt this team a little bit more than expected. And then obviously I've talked about this multiple times, the Kevin Kiermaier contract. As soon as that was signed, we're like, why did this even happen? It doesn't make any sense. You have Daulton Varsho. That is literally Kevin Kiermaier with a better bat and probably at this point better defensively. And then IKF. We've talked about that kind of up and down. And then going back to 2015, obviously the ALCS, we know about that. The ALDS, Texas Rangers. Again, a lot of hope there. What do they do in that offseason? They signed J.A. Happ, pretty good signing, 3 years, $65 million. Marco Estrada on a 2-year. But other than that, like, they signed Darwin Barney to a minor league deal. They had Joe Biagini for a minor league deal. Just not a lot done for your team. And again, at that point, you have Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion, you have Josh Donaldson. But it's the same thing, is that you saw kind of what happened. You see what happened with your team, with your current roster, and you don't really make a lot of moves to add to that. So just with free agency, with a history of trades, with a history of just no success in the playoffs whatsoever, I'm at the point where why would we trust this guy for the 9th year in a row when he hasn't done anything good for this organization?
That's what I mean, Carter. I look back over all those, and there were some great signings. I will admit, every time I look back, I'm like, okay, you know what? I understand. But it seems like in every big situation where this team is on the verge of greatness, it's like you just need one or two moves. You just need one or two big free agent acquisitions that could completely take this team from being, an ALCS, an ALDS appearance, whatever, to a World Series contender. But instead of doing that, it's like we take a step forward and we take 2 steps back. We take a step forward and we take 2 steps up. Oh, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, and Kevin Biggio are all coming up? That's great. We'll be bad for 2 years. Oh, they're up? Oh, we found a gem in Teoscar Hernandez? Let's throw that away. Oh, the boys did really good? Let's try to build on that. And then they don't build on it. Instead, they're making free agent signings out of the graveyard. I don't know. It's just, where do you take it from here? And I think at the end of the day, Carter, you're right. And again, I'm going to say this again. 8-9 years is a long time with no success. Look at what the Boston Bruins did, firing the coach after 20 bad games. They just had an immaculate season. And the Blue Jays are just sticking with their guy. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm excited to see what people have to say in the comments, because it's gonna be pretty crazy.
It's surprising that they're just not making a lot of changes. Ross Atkins, with the executives in his front office, did not really make any major moves. And we go back to Alex Anthopoulos, the GM of our dreams, I guess you could say. What do they do in that season? They trade for Troy Tulowitzki. They trade for David Price, one of the best pitchers in the game at that time. And you look at what Ross Atkins does in these trade deadline scenarios. Yeah, he got Whit Merrifield. Again, is that really moving the needle? That was a good trade. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for that. But is Whit Merrifield going to be the guy that's going to change your organization? It seems like when it's time to put up or shut up, that quote I've used so many times on this podcast, Ross Atkins continues to just not do enough for this organization.
Yeah, dude, I think that's the best way to put it. I think in big situations, when the lights get turned on and they get too bright, Ross Atkins, cowers in a cave somewhere and forgets what his job is. Again, we've talked about this. But we've said our pieces on the players and how most of the players have had to do more. We understand that. We're not saying that at all. But in the same respect, Ross Atkins has to do his job better. And I don't think that there's an excuse for not winning a playoff game. I think there's zero excuses. Let us know what you guys think. I cannot wait to see the comments on this one because I can only imagine there's some of you that, Carter, you said in the beginning, there's some of you that think it's not Ross Atkins' fault at all. He should have stayed. And then others, I would think the majority, think that he should have been gone a long time ago. So I can't wait for that. Make sure you guys leave us your comments. Maybe we'll read them all in an upcoming episode as like a third segment. Hey, these are some of the funny comments we got or something like that. We want to talk Blake Snell, Carter. I don't know. Do you have anything else to get into on Ross Atkins here, or have we sort of covered?
I got one more thing. Say Ross Atkins has a very good offseason. I don't know. We get Juan Soto. Maybe we even don't go that route necessarily. You get Santander, Bregman. And the Toronto Blue Jays have a really good season, actually. Let's say they make the ALCS. Are we forgiving Ross Atkins at this point? Is that where we're at?
Hey, if we win a playoff game, he's done his job, okay? If he's won a playoff game, he's showing growth, I guess. But I mean, what are the odds? Like I said, I've said this multiple times that I think Santander and Glaber are your two guys. Some people don't like the Glaber one. I'm still on the fence a little bit about that, but I think that would be a good offseason. And I think that free agency would be a success. So then moving into the season, got to be on the players. So if Ross Atkins can do his job this offseason, and we'll know within, as soon as pitchers and catchers report, pretty much, we'll know, okay, did he do his job or didn't he? And, there'll be an episode on that for sure. How about for you? Are you like, yeah, I'm right back with him or what?
I'm not in for one playoff win. If we lose in the wild card series, even if we lose in the ALDS, I'm still not in on Ross Atkins. You need major growth in this offseason with all the free agents that you have, with all the superstars that you could have in free agency. You could make a trade, like he said. You do have the pieces for it. I want to see Ross Atkins go balls to the walls here. I want to see him go all out. If he goes all out and strikes out, I think no matter what, he's going to be gone anyway. So for me, it's ALCS or bust for Ross Atkins.
I like that. And I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, because I mean, again, like we've talked about, players can have bad years. Guys don't show up. But I think if Ross Atkins makes the move or some of the moves that we think are solid, I think then we can't question him because he's then done his job. And that is all we can ask of him at the end of the day. Then the players still have to show up. So if I see some moves that I like this offseason that I think could bolster this team into a, playoff contending team, then I think that we have to be happy. Do we have to think he should be coming back? Not necessarily. But I think we can't be upset with him after that, really. I think you just got to take it at face value and move on from the season.
Yeah, I guess my biggest question for the people that are watching is that how long of a leash do you have for Ross Atkins? Say the season goes to complete crap in the middle of the season. You don't really see GMs being fired in the middle of the season necessarily, but are you saying it's a 50-game leash? Are you waiting until the end of the season? If there is another unsuccessful season for the Blue Jays, are you okay with Ross Atkins coming back again for the 2026 season? Just let us know where you guys are at with Ross Atkins. And like you said as well, how much is on the players? How much is on Ross Atkins? And whose fault was it for the 2024 season that was overwhelmingly disappointing for the Toronto Blue Jays? But it's the Los Angeles Dodgers. We got to get into it. They somehow get even better. We're going to go over their rotation, just how unstoppable they're going to look on paper. But again, it's baseball. Things can happen. That's why the MLB baseball is so fun. Sometimes you get these little sleepers. You get the Texas Rangers, you get the Braves, teams that aren't necessarily favored to win the World Series that can make these runs. So we're going to go into all of that after this short break.
So, Carter, you brought it up. We've talked about it here and there. Blake Snell signs 5-year, $182 million deal. With who? Oh, yeah, the Dodgers. Why not, of course, because isn't that where everybody's signing nowadays?
That's what it's seeming like. And I just want to go over on paper. Again, injuries can happen, things like that. They have Tyler Glass now, who's honestly just made a glass now. There you go. Nice. They have Clayton Kershaw. They got, they have a lot of depth here. So I think opening day, and then they have Sasaki, another guy from the Japan League that is favored to go to the Los Angeles Dodgers as well. So they can make a starting pitcher trade and get even better with some of the pieces that they do have. But right now, I guess the opening day roster, I'm going to throw Shohei Ohtani as your number one guy. Then I'll throw Blake Snell at number two. Then you got Yamamoto at number three. You can honestly change any of those three in any way you want. I don't think you can really go wrong. Then you'd have Tyler Glasnow at four. And then you'd either have Miller, Tony Gosselin, or Dustin May as your fifth guy. Or Clayton Kershaw's there as well. So you have a lot of options for this Los Angeles Dodgers team from a starting pitching standpoint. And they're still in on Shohei Ohtani, or they're still in on Juan Soto. They still have expressed interest in bringing Teoscar Hernandez back. So they are far from done this free agency.
It's sickening. It sickens me to my core. Just a little, again, Blake Snell, 2-time Cy Young winner, 1-time All-Star, which I found a little strange, 2-time ERA title. He is nothing to scoff at. And you're right. The odds of them still making 2-3 more moves, probably in the cards. They're disgusting. They're going to be disgusting again. I brought this up on a podcast a while ago with a guy saying that the MLB and baseball in general could use an absolute super team to drive viewership, drive fans and whatever, because it would make every team a ton of money to see this absolute unit of a team roll through their city. No, thanks. That sounds terrible. Can we have a little bit of parity in the league maybe? And not the Yankees, Dodgers once again? That would be great.
Well, and of that 182 million, they deferred 65 million of that. So I think the Dodgers have literally found the cheat code. Just defer all the money for multiple years and just build a super team right now. Win your 4 championships over 10 years. That might be selling them a little bit short. Or maybe that's overselling them. Again, it's baseball. Lots of things can happen. But I don't think too many Los Angeles Dodgers fans are going to complain if they are bad in 2040 after all the success they're going to have on this run.
Yeah, no, what they could do is defer all this money, then win a bunch of championships that end up paying for all of that money because you have all these people coming to town to watch you play. And then who knows? I mean, if it doesn't go well in 10 years, you could just say, screw it, bankruptcy. If nobody would know the difference. So it's just crazy. Baseball is crazy. You know what? We're big hockey guys too. So I'm a salary cap fan myself. Baseball just isn't that. It never will be. It will never change. But man, imagine baseball with a salary cap. How crazy that would be. I one of these days I would like to run a simulation or something on start at 1942 and 1950, whatever you want to say, and just start run a simulation of all the seasons, but every team has a salary cap and see how different the league would be today, what the contracts would be. It would be such an interesting idea. I should actually see if somebody's done that already.
It would be pretty wild to see MLB under salary cap, but MLB is one of the unique leagues that doesn't have a salary cap. So you don't really see this kind of stuff happening a lot of the time. The NBA has some sort of salary cap. I'm not exactly familiar with the NBA because honestly, I don't really care about the NBA, but I think we might have found the key to life here. I'm going to start a small business, maybe like a fast food chain or something. I'm going to hire all my employees and I'm going to defer all their money until 2050. I'm just not going to pay anyone. I'm going to say, yeah, you're not getting paid for 20 years. You got to stay here for 20 years if you want your money. And then I'm going to just start my small business. I don't have to worry about profit margins too much if I'm not paying any of my employees for the first 20 years of my business.
You know what? That's a great idea. Carter, actually, that's how this podcast runs too. Like me and you just we've deferred all of our money to 2078. So
we reversed it. We got all the money that we're going to have for the next 30 years, but we have it right now already. So we're just going to be living in luxury for the first 30 years.
Yeah. Me and Carter have a combined $5 to our name, and we've reversed deferred it. So this is great. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It's been a blast. We got a ton more coming. We got a huge episode tomorrow. Huge episode Monday. The return of Skylar Peters. I know. It's been a while, but Pistol Pete had to make his return, and he will on Monday. We got Anthony Santander. We're gonna chat him. A couple other guys tomorrow. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And as always, we really appreciate you guys listening, weighing in with all of your comments and opinions. It's fantastic. So in saying all that, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.